is looking to fundamentally restructure the international trading system. And just yesterday, he announced a pause on what is called a global set of reciprocal tariffs for all countries but China.
It might sound impossible, even downright unreal. The United States, once the titan of world manufacturing, now finds itself threatened by the very neighbor that was long considered its friendliest ally. Tesla, the undeniable giant in electric vehicle innovation, is suddenly scrambling for raw materials, reeling from abrupt supply chain disruptions, and grappling with a whole new economic reality. Canada, of all places, has just slammed the door on crucial resources for Tesla's production lines, triggering a chain reaction across the entire American auto sector. But why would Canada, historically America's most loyal partner, decide to turn the tables now? How did it happen so quickly, and why does Tesla, once invincible, suddenly look so vulnerable? Even more astonishing is the domino effect rippling across auto factories and small towns from Michigan to Ontario. Thousands of jobs, perhaps tens of thousands, hang in the balance, and the tremors go beyond specialized raw materials. Suddenly, the entire cost structure of electric vehicles is in question. If you thought the EV revolution was unstoppable, think again. Canada's bold economic strike might just have thrown it into reverse. In this video, we're diving into the unseen story behind Tesla's supply chain meltdown, how Canada's strategic tariffs created a shockwave across the entire U.S. auto landscape, and why these events tie into the broader unraveling of American industry. Get comfortable. This is a deep, dramatic tale of betrayal, broken promises, and a global realignment happening right under our noses. You won't just learn how Tesla was blindsided, you'll discover the blueprint of a much larger international power shift. And by the end, you'll be asking, is this simply about Elon Musk and one company's misfortune? Or a symptom of a deeper malaise that could transform the very fabric of American life? For years, the relationship between the US and Canada in the auto sector was seamless. Factories on both sides of the border formed a single, integrated system, an engine that churned out trucks, sedans, and SUVs with remarkable efficiency. Raw materials from Canadian mines fed assembly lines in Michigan and Ohio. Aluminum from Quebec formed car frames in Indiana. Engines from Windsor, Ontario were shipped over the border and combined with electronics from the States. This synergy was so tight that a car might cross the border 5 or 6 times in various stages before it finally hit the dealership lot. But everything changed with a single swift move from Canadian policymakers. In a matter of days, Canada slapped hefty tariffs on essential materials, nickel, lithium, aluminum, that Tesla and other electric vehicle makers depend on for battery production. If you follow Tesla's global supply chain, you'll notice that while it has gigafactories in Nevada, Texas, and elsewhere, the company still relies on certain specialized minerals from Canada. Canada, recognizing that leverage abruptly restricted exports and imposed surcharges that make it much more expensive for American manufacturers to source these supplies. Picture the scramble at Tesla's headquarters. Supply chain managers in frantic conference calls with Canadian mines, finance teams assessing the short and long-term costs, and Elon Musk, once supremely confident in his global partnerships, demanding solutions overnight. The shockwaves spread further as Tesla's stock took a sudden dip. Investors, startled by the abrupt announcement, started questioning whether Tesla's ambitious production targets might be threatened. Battery costs were already volatile, but now they threatened to balloon so much that Tesla faced a stark choice: raise car prices or eat the cost. In an auto market that's more competitive every day, neither option feels appealing. Yet Canada's move was not merely about Tesla, it was a shot across the bow of the entire American auto industry. Detroit's giants, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, also rely on Canadian resources and cross-border parts shipments. Suddenly, every automaker that prided itself on North American integration realized that the integration was now a knife at their throat. The deeper sting? Canada framed these tariffs in the language of green policies and environmental responsibility. Officials claimed they were recalibrating trade to incentivize cleaner domestic production. In a world increasingly concerned with climate change, that argument has teeth. But behind the ecological rhetoric, it's clear there's also an economic power play. Canada wants to be the main stage for EV and battery manufacturing, not just a silent partner shipping raw minerals south. By turning off the faucet, Canada essentially told American companies, if you want unfettered access to these minerals, build your plants here on our soil. For Tesla, that means rethinking its entire North American footprint. Could they build a new battery factory in Quebec or Ontario? Possibly. But such undertakings require billions of dollars, a trained workforce, and time. Lots of time. Meanwhile, the EV market moves fast, and any production delay gives room for foreign competitors to seize the moment. Ford, for instance, might pivot to different suppliers or focus on alternate battery chemistries, while General Motors might expand partnerships with mines in other parts of the world. But none of these solutions happen overnight, and as the cost of raw materials climbs, it's American car buyers who ultimately pay the difference. The era when EV manufacturers boasted about how quickly they drive down prices seems, for the moment, on hold. Those once hopeful predictions about $25,000 easy electric cars by mid-decade, they might be overshadowed by new headlines about supply shortages, cost hikes, and the scramble to realign. Canada's economic ambush, therefore, isn't just a short-term upset. It's a structural assault on the very foundation of how U.S. automakers operate. For the first time in decades, America finds itself at a disadvantage in an industry it once dominated. And if you think Canada's bold strategy stopped there, wait until you see how they're leveraging climate policies to punish foreign automakers and promote homegrown champions. Step aside old school protectionism. There's a new kid on the block, green nationalism. While classic trade wars revolve around tariffs and quotas, Canada is packaging its move in the glossy rhetoric of sustainability and climate leadership. To the average voter in Toronto or Vancouver, it sounds noble. Ramp up electric car adoption, reduce greenhouse gases, invest in local production, and ensure jobs stay in Canada. But to American automakers, it's a direct punch to the gut, one that threatens their bottom line and global market share. Here's how it works. Canada's New Democratic Party, NDP, proposed a punishing 100% tariff on Tesla vehicles sold in Canada. Imagine you're a Canadian consumer excited to buy a Tesla Model 3. Suddenly, that car is effectively twice the price it was, rendering it a luxury item only a handful can afford. Simultaneously, the NDP rolled out a $10,000 subsidy for Canadians who opt to buy locally produced electric cars, models built within Canada's borders. Talk about a 1-2 punch. The justification? We must protect our environment and invest in clean energy jobs here at home. But practically, it shapes a climate policy that doubles as a cunning economic strategy. By making foreign EVs prohibitively expensive and domestic EVs comparatively cheaper, Canada is engineering a favorable ecosystem for Canadian-made electric vehicles. Ford, GM, and even Volkswagen have begun pivoting to produce more of their electric models in Ontario and other provinces. For them, that means tapping into local labor and resources to avoid steep tariffs and to snag those enticing subsidies. Tesla, famously recognized as the global pioneer of EV technology, finds itself in an awkward bind. So reliant on cross-border commerce, yet blocked from playing on equal footing. If Elon Musk wants to compete in the Canadian market, he'd have to build or expand facilities on Canadian soil. That means funneling billions into new or upgraded factories, securing local labor, and rethinking a supply chain carefully calibrated for U.S. operations. And all of that, ironically, could be a win for Canada. More Tesla factories in Canada means more tax revenue, more local suppliers, more jobs, and eventually, more political capital to shape the future of North American EV manufacturing. Meanwhile, there's a broader dimension. The U.S. government had its own climate agenda under the Trump administration, ironically enough, which included pushing for EV adoption, even if overshadowed by other more protectionist trade moves. But now, With the U.S. locked in a trade fight with Canada, that plan is coming undone. Without stable, fairly priced Canadian resources, Tesla and other American automakers can't produce electric cars at the volume or cost needed for mass adoption. The result? The entire North American EV strategy stalls. Some might see Canada's approach as cunning realpolitik, using the moral high ground of environmental stewardship to mask a brutal economic maneuver. Others hail it as a justified rebalancing. After years of being overshadowed by American manufacturing, Canada is taking center stage in the crucial EV era. Either way, it's a turning point that underscores how climate policy can morph into a potent trade weapon in a heartbeat. For consumers, both American and Canadian, the shift might be more tangible than philosophical. Fewer affordable EV choices, more expensive cars on the lot, and uncertain future supply. And for the auto industry's workforce, each announcement triggers new anxieties. Will this lead to relocations, plant shutdowns in the U.S., or perhaps expansions in Canada at the expense of American factories? This is precisely how an industry can unravel. One day, everything is business as usual. The next, a neighbor harnesses a global movement like climate awareness to tilt the playing field in its favor. From Tesla's vantage point, it's a threat that demands immediate adaptation. From Ford and GM's perspective, it might be an opportunity if they play their cards right. But from a broader view, it portends a violent shakeup in how cars are built, priced, and sold across North America. And it doesn't stop there. Because once these tariffs start rolling, the entire integrated supply chain that defined the region for decades begins to buckle under the strain. When one piece in a delicate puzzle shifts, it's rarely an isolated incident. In the auto world, that puzzle is the integrated supply chain linking raw minerals, part suppliers, assembly plants, distribution networks, and eventually car dealerships. For decades, the glue holding everything together was the near-frictionless trade between the U.S. and Canada. Once Canada injected aggressive tariffs into the system, the consequences exploded in every direction. Consider the typical journey of a Tesla battery pack. It might source lithium from a Canadian mine, ship that to a processing plant, then send the refined product down to Nevada for assembly. From there, parts might cross back up to a Canadian facility for a finishing procedure, then return to a Tesla gigafactory in Texas. This cross-border dance was only feasible because of minimal trade barriers. Each crossing added marginal logistical costs, but it was still cheaper overall than building full extraction, processing, and assembly capacities in one location. This is why you're hearing about production line stoppages at multiple auto plants, even beyond electric vehicles. Because if battery parts become scarce or pricey, it often cascades into other areas. Delayed vehicle rollouts, misaligned shipping schedules, and a ripple effect that hits suppliers who depend on consistent orders from automakers. Tier 1 suppliers might respond by raising their own prices to offset the new tariffs, which then forces Tier 2 and Tier 3 suppliers further down the chain to adjust their margins or face closure. The entire system starts stuttering. The real worry among industry insiders is that these aren't temporary disruptions. The longer tariffs stay in place and the more Canada doubles down on its resource leverage, the less likely the old supply chain model is to survive. In the best-case scenario, automakers build new local capacities or negotiate special deals. But building a new facility or forging brand new trade routes can take years. During that time, global competitors keep innovating. South Korea's Hyundai and Kia are refining their EV lines. Germany's Volkswagen invests in more efficient battery production, and even newcomer Vietnam's VinFast attempts to seize global market share. Tesla's lead, once seemingly unassailable, is not guaranteed to last if it's bogged down by a North American trade fiasco. And yes, consumers are going to notice the effect immediately. Automakers struggling to maintain profit margins will pass costs along through higher sticker prices. A slump in overall production can also shrink the variety of models on the market. Suddenly, the brand new electric crossover you plan to lease might be delayed by 6 months or come with a price tag $5,000 higher than last year. Meanwhile, used car prices, previously an alternative, are also shooting up. Worse yet is the emotional toll. Part of EV's appeal was its promise of steady downward pricing over time, improved technology, economies of scale, and mass adoption, leading to cheaper electric cars for everyone. Now, that narrative is derailed. Instead of becoming more affordable, EVs risk sliding into luxury territory again. Ironically, at the exact time governments wanted them to go mainstream. The domino effect started by a single change in Canadian trade policy reveals just how vulnerable the American auto industry is. An industry that, for a century, was the unrivaled engine of American prosperity. Next up is the heartbreak hitting the most loyal constituents of that industry, the blue-collar workforce. Look at the industrial heartlands of America. Places like Flint, Michigan, Toledo, Ohio, Janesville, Wisconsin. These towns once pulsed with life thanks to assembly lines that offered decent wages and job security. Politicians of every stripe promised the same narrative. We'll protect American jobs. We'll stand by American workers. Donald Trump's presidency particularly resonated with these communities by asserting a new wave of protectionism. Tariffs, he claimed, would make America great again, shielding domestic industries and reviving old factories. But for the men and women clocking in at auto plants, the reality is starting to look grimly familiar. Instead of roars of renewed production, they're hearing rumors of shift reductions. Instead of expanded hiring, they're seeing layoffs. In many cases, these outcomes are direct byproducts of the trade strife with Canada. The cost of essential materials has soared, and no amount of patriotic rhetoric can override basic economics. If it's too expensive to keep producing a certain model, the plant managers will cut back. Some of these towns had been on a slow rebound. Local restaurants reopened. Families dared to dream again of a better life for their kids. That optimism is fading. Workers who pin their hopes on a political promise feel betrayed. We voted for tariffs. We believed it would bring back factory glory, not push more factories toward the edge. There's palpable anger that might be aimed at the U.S. government or at Canada or at the entire system that let them down. And there's an underlying sense of whiplash. After years of hearing how Canada was just like a friendly extension of America, now it's an adversary. For union leaders who try to salvage negotiations with corporate management, the conflict is more complex. They see the shrinking margins in real time. They know if raw materials become unaffordable, there's only so much they can do to keep production lines running. Automation was already threatening jobs. Tariffs might accelerate that shift because companies will invest more in robots if labor and materials both cost too much. And ironically, some factories are not shutting down entirely, but relocating, sometimes to Canada itself, where companies can avoid cross-border tariffs by producing within Canadian territory. That's the ultimate betrayal for a factory town in the Midwest, losing your plant to the very country you thought was part of your own economic family. The politicians aren't blind to this. They see the tide turning, especially heading into any election cycle. The narrative of Canada stabbed us in the back might resonate for some voters, but for many, it's overshadowed by practical concerns. Do I still have a job next month? How do I afford my mortgage if my shift is canceled? The heartbreak is that many workers believed wholeheartedly in an America First revival. They never anticipated that their livelihoods could be undercut by a new wave of tariffs designed, ironically, to protect them from foreign competition. Meanwhile, the cost of living is not standing still. Inflation, rent hikes, and rising car prices turn up the pressure cooker on families living paycheck to paycheck. A single round of layoffs can tip a community into a downward spiral. Fewer paychecks mean less spending at local shops and restaurants, which leads those businesses to scale back or close, resulting in more layoffs. The whole local economy can collapse like a house of cards. This unraveling sets the stage for deeper dissatisfaction and political realignments. Many of these communities might start questioning not just a single politician's approach, but the entire system of trade that has left them so vulnerable. If you think the betrayal is only felt in the auto plants, consider the heart-stopping sticker shock hitting consumers nationwide, both employed and unemployed. Because the next wave of pain in this saga is hitting people right where it hurts, their wallets. Cars have always been central to American culture, symbolizing freedom, independence, and status. Yet, what happens when that new or even used car becomes so expensive that regular people can't afford it? Across the country, dealership lots are marked by soaring prices. Shoppers who a year or two ago could snag a compact sedan or a pre-owned crossover for a reasonable sum now face a harsh new reality. The same vehicles cost thousands more, and financing rates are climbing higher by the month. Ironically, used cars, once considered a safe haven for budget-conscious buyers, are no bargain either. Why? Because fewer people are trading in or selling their used vehicles, uncertain if they can afford a new one anytime soon. Additionally, rental agencies, which typically refresh their fleets frequently, scaled back new purchases during previous downturns, leaving fewer used vehicles cycling into the market. Combined with the scarcity of new cars, this scarcity drives pre-owned vehicle prices to record highs. Families who once viewed used cars as a reliable fallback now face monthly payments that can strain their budgets to the brink. Let's not forget insurance and maintenance. If car parts are trapped in this tariff-laden environment, a simple repair that used to cost a few $100s can now soar to $1,000 or more. Body shops pay more for steel panels, mechanics pay more for specialized electric components, and replacement parts might be stuck in logistical limbo. Insurance companies catch wind of these spikes and raise premiums, anticipating higher repair payouts. The result? Owning a car becomes a financial juggling act, and many households are left deciding whether it's even worth keeping one. The tragedy is that for large swaths of the country, especially rural and suburban areas, public transportation isn't a practical alternative. Americans have structured their lives around personal vehicles. Jobs, schools, and health services are rarely within walking distance. When it costs too much to own or maintain a car, the fallout is more than just frustration. It's an impediment to daily life. People delay job hunts because they can't reliably commute. Families cut back on groceries to afford the car payment. The entire social fabric of those communities can suffer. In the short term, you might see dealers scramble for ways to sweeten deals, but with material costs climbing, there's only so much they can do without hemorrhaging money. Manufacturer incentives might appear, but they're overshadowed by raw cost realities. Analysts watching these trends worry that America is heading toward a car ownership crisis, an unsustainable spike in automotive expenses that, combined with inflation on other essentials, can push households toward default or forgo having a vehicle entirely. This sticker shock fiasco is one clear sign that the problem isn't fleeting, it's structural, as integral parts of the supply chain unravel. And it's about more than just driving. It reveals how deeply the U.S. economy has become dependent on global arrangements that can be upended by a single political decision from a neighbor. The consequences reverberate through every aspect of life, from the daily commute to the broader question of American manufacturing, which leads us into the heart of the crisis, the crumbling bedrock of industrial America. In the 20th century, American factories were the envy of the world. They powered victory in global conflicts, drove unprecedented economic growth, and built the American middle class. Today, that manufacturing heritage is on shaky ground. The Canada-US trade rift highlights the deeper issues. The factories we rely on for everything from cars to refrigerators are often dependent on imported components, some of which come from Canada, others from all around the globe. Over decades, American companies searched for cheaper labor, fewer regulations, and cost efficiencies abroad. The result? A skeleton of domestic production that's not self-sufficient. If, for example, Canada cuts off aluminum or nickel, there's no immediate robust alternative in the US to fill that void. And it's not just about raw materials. Skilled labor is also in short supply. Generations were steered toward white-collar jobs, while vocational schools and apprenticeship programs were neglected. As older factory workers retire, fewer young people are trained to replace them. In an ironic twist, if you wanted to scale up a Tesla battery gigafactory in the States, you'd face the dual challenge of sourcing materials and recruiting technicians with the necessary expertise. One might assume the solution is to bring all manufacturing back home, but the complexities of global trade have grown too large for simplistic answers. Building a new smelting plant or refining facility in the U.S. requires environmental permits, massive capital investment, and sustained political support. By the time any such plant is up and running, if it can even navigate the bureaucracy, market dynamics might have shifted again. Meanwhile, rival nations are pressing full steam ahead. China invests billions in vertical integration, controlling both the mines and the factories that produce finished goods. South Korea invests heavily in advanced manufacturing tech. Germany continues modernizing to maintain its engineering dominance. America has pockets of industrial excellence, silicon-based manufacturing in the semiconductor industry, for instance. But even there, the supply chain depends on inputs from Japan, Taiwan, and yes, sometimes Canada. The patchwork approach reveals that the U.S. can't just flip a switch and produce everything domestically at scale, especially not under the constraints of a trade war. This crisis extends well beyond car frames and battery packs. A shortage of mechanical parts means broken farm equipment, halted construction projects, and potential disruptions in sectors like aerospace and defense. Government contracts that rely on advanced manufacturing might see their timelines slip as components become harder to get. So you see, the demise of robust American manufacturing doesn't only hurt the economy in a general sense, it could also weaken national security, hamper technological progress, and erode any leadership the U.S. once claimed in driving global innovation. Then there's the human cost. As factories shut down or reduce production, entire towns unravel. These aren't just dots on a map, they're communities built around a shared livelihood. Schools lose funding, local services erode, and families move away in search of jobs. The intangible result is the loss of identity. For many Americans, the pride of manufacturing is woven into the national narrative, a story of grit and ingenuity. When plants close, that narrative feels like a lie. At the same time, we're told that America's unemployment rate remains relatively low, but that doesn't paint the whole picture. People might find jobs in the service sector, waiting tables, working retail, or driving for gig apps. But the wages and benefits rarely match what manufacturing once provided. The social contract is broken, leaving many to question the direction of the entire economy. Now, if you think that's enough self-inflicted pain, wait until you realize the bigger, more immediate problem. Even the food on American tables is under threat. Because while the auto industry fights for its life, the agriculture sector is suffering a meltdown of its own, partly thanks to immigration policies that choke off the workforce needed to sustain farms. Ever wonder who actually harvests the produce you see in supermarkets, or who milks the cows supplying your dairy? For decades, American agriculture has depended heavily on migrant labor, people coming from Mexico and Central America, working strenuous, low-paying jobs that few Americans are willing to do. They pick strawberries under the hot sun, move livestock from dawn to dusk, and prepare countless fields for planting or harvesting. Now, imagine an immigration crackdown that intensifies deportations and severely restricts work visas. Suddenly, farms that had relied on these laborers are left flailing. Fruit remains unpicked. Dairy cows aren't being milked efficiently. Meatpacking plants operate well below capacity. The produce you see on store shelves is in shorter supply, and the result is higher prices on everything from lettuce to milk. At a glance, it might seem unrelated to the US-Canada trade friction, but it's part of a bigger pattern of policies that treat entire sectors of the economy as afterthoughts. The same America First approach that slapped tariffs on auto parts also advocated for stringent immigration rules, believing it would protect American jobs. Instead, it's driving the cost of labor through the roof and leaving many essential positions vacant. The few Americans who do apply for these farm jobs often quit. The backbreaking labor and minimal pay are starkly unappealing. In regions like California's Central Valley or the orchard-laden sections of Washington state, farmers are watching entire fields go to waste. They can't find enough workers to complete the harvest in time. The heartbreak is enormous, and so is the economic loss. Billions of dollars worth of produce is being destroyed or left unharvested every season due to labor shortages, and as supply diminishes, supermarket prices climb for you and me. Dairy is similarly hit. Milking cows is labor-intensive, requiring early mornings and unwavering routine. Large dairy farms that once employed migrant workers find themselves short-staffed, sometimes forced to sell off their herds. The U.S. was once a top global exporter of dairy products. That position is slipping as domestic producers can't keep pace. Meatpacking, too, is in crisis, with some plants drastically reducing throughput because they lack the labor to operate each shift effectively. All of this contributes to a compounding effect. The cost of living ticks upward, personal incomes remain stagnant or vanish if your job was at a shuttered factory, and the average American is forced to pay more for less. People blame inflation, corporate greed, or shifting consumer habits. But part of the story is the misguided assumption that slamming the immigration door shut would only bring positive outcomes. Instead, it's starving the very industries that feed America. So we have an unraveling auto industry, a stressed agriculture sector, and a workforce that can't fill the gaps. Where does that leave the average American's pocketbook? On very shaky ground, as we'll see when we delve into the reality of stagnant wages paired with soaring expenses, the next big piece of this perfect storm. So here we stand at the edge of a shifting world. Canada, once the United States' most predictable partner, has taken a stand that exposes how fragile the American auto empire really is. Elon Musk, hailed as a visionary, now confronts the stark reality that even Tesla's global reputation can't shield it from raw material squeezes and political pushback. Blue-collar workers in Midwestern towns who believed in promises of renewed prosperity are facing layoffs and broken dreams. Meanwhile, China seizes the opportunity to solidify its control over critical minerals, forging a new economic map that might leave the U.S. struggling to keep up. As consumers, as citizens, we're left with tough choices. Do we push for policies that restore cross-border harmony? Or do we double down on isolationist strategies hoping for self-sufficiency? Do we accept foreign competition as inevitable? Or do we rally for a new wave of local industry that requires billions in investment and stable political consensus? And in all of this, where does the environment fit in, given that climate considerations are fueling some of the biggest shifts in trade policy we've ever seen? We want to hear from you. Is this just the beginning of an inevitable realignment, or can the US and Canada find a path back to genuine partnership? Will Tesla survive these storms and continue to innovate, or is this a fatal blow to its future dominance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read each and every one. And if you found this breakdown eye-opening or even unsettling, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. The world is changing fast, and we'll be here to guide you through every twist and turn. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and buckle up, because the ride is only going to get wilder from here.